Did you know that a baby pangolin is called a pangopup, and that female pangolins have one pangopup at a time that clings to the top of their long, scaled tails? Foraging for ants up trees and on forest floors in Africa and Asia, there are 8 species of pangolins, the only mammals to have scales. They are strange, curious-looking animals, their plate-like scales intricate and regimented, like a fir cone, an artichoke, a fern, some sort of imaginary moving plant with beady eyes. A creature of the forest itself, their genus name Manis, was chosen by the 18th century zoologist Carl Linnaeus for the Latin for spirit because of its obscure and otherworldly appearance. With no teeth, just a very long tongue, and a defensive instinct to curl up into a tight ball, their modern name comes from the Malayan word Pangolin, that means one who rolls up. When they are in a ball, their scales spiral into a pattern and shape like an ammonite, and as still as a fossil, desperately patient, they stay cocooned, only uncurling when the threat has gone. There are 3 species in Ghana, although the giant pangolin is thought to be extinct. The other 2, the long-tailed and the black-bellied, are critically endangered, just like all pangolins across the world. Hunted for their meat and their scales, their future is bleak. Though there has been an international ban on the pangolin trade from 2017, according to the 2020 report on wildlife crime from the UNODC, in the last 5 years, over 400,000 pangolins have been killed for their scales. In Ghana, pangolins live in Atua Forest in the south of the country. Steep-sided hills and ridges are covered in a swathe of dark green, broken up by low-hanging mists that linger. Scented blossom spills out down the valleys. Atua is a collection of treasures, from over 200 species of birds to endemic plants and insects, but Atua's own existence also hangs in the balance. As well as its animals being poached, it is illegally felled for its trees and mined for its gold and bauxite, facing an onslaught of human obstacles. But for now, there is still a forest, and within it, there are still pangolins. I know this because I am walking through Atua with a pangolin amongst the trees, my body dripping with sweat, here to give the forest back its most precious animal. I have walked up and down steep tracks, first a muddy vermilion road and on, cutting into the forest down animal trails, lines made from antelope, porcupine, civet cats, a slither of compacted earth running through the trees. As I have walked, I have begun to understand the forest, that it is a being of light and shade, a creature of dappled patterns of greens and golds, accenting pockets of black, a thing of stillness that provokes an instinct of feeling eerily away from everything that I know, because deep inside the forest it is noise that is proof of existence, not motion. Still and loud is a combination that speaks of a strange imbalance, of skewed reality, of hidden truth that my human brain scrambles to understand. A truth that is seeping back into the pangolin, telling it that it is home as it hears the layers of sound build up from the forest floor to the canopy way above us. Whistles and squeaks, some ongoing, some sporadic, constant humming, buzzing, whirring, noises that spring from vibrations of all pitches like a spice mix of sound. No one noise dominates. Instead, they fight each other, simmering down to a rhythmic background tune, like standing on the edge of a fairground. I catch my breath, watching the only movement other than me, a blue diadem butterfly. Its wingspan is as wide as my palm, and it's named after the cornflowers for its blue coat. It flits past my head and down to the ground like a falling leaf, settling on a vine in front of my feet. A delicate, bright piece of the forest that stands out in an iridescent gleam. The pangolin is the opposite. Each scale is the colour of the darkest brown leaves fading into the golden tone of the sunlight that is seeping through the gaps in the trees. Its scales are made from keratin, the same material that nails are made from. Each one has the forest's earth under it, fragments of home that it took with it when it was kidnapped by hunters and put in a plastic bag on the side of the road to be sold and eaten. In Ghana, main roads act as moving supermarkets. Hawkers weave in and out of the traffic with silver bowls on their heads, selling everything from shrimp kebabs to phone chargers, giant snails to mirrors and maps, Bibles, washing detergent, fire extinguishers. Bushmeat is also sold. On the fast road between the 2 main cities in Ghana, Accra and Kumasi, little grass-roofed huts pop up every now and then. On tables or being held by the sellers, there are dead 7-kilogram cane rats known as grass cutters, antelopes and civet cats laid out, dripping with blood, pools of maroon dotting the ground. Amongst these wild animals are pangolins. Despite being illegal to hunt, they fetch the highest price out of all the bushmeat. Considered to be a royal delicacy, they are eaten for special occasions or by those who can afford them. There is a darker trade in Ghana too, where buyers hoard collections of pangolins to sell their scales for Chinese medicine. Ground up into powder and put into a pill, the scales have no proven health benefits, but just like rhino horn and moon bear bile, the demand overrides scientific fact. There are some organisations determined to give a voice to the pangolins and fight to save not only these animals but the forest that they live in. One of them is A. Rocha, a conservational NGO in Ghana that agreed to take me on a pangolin patrol. They are the reason why I'm in the middle of the forest with the pangolin, a group of conservationists determined to make a difference. I went with Daryl Boso, the Deputy National Director who conducts regular patrols, educating the sellers and confiscating the pangolins. He explained how many of the sellers have bought the pangolins from hunters, both groups often not realising the pangolin is a protected species. Kept alive, they are put at the backs of stands, stored in bags or hidden within the middle section of old car tyres. Without food or water for days, they slowly weaken, unable to stay in their defensive ball, hanging limply when the sellers hold them by their tails, their long tongues falling towards the ground. It is a pitiful sight. But they can recover. Pangolins rescued in a bad state are housed in cages overnight, sometimes longer by Daryl's team, supported by conservationist and researcher Ransford Agai, who sprinkle honey nearby to attract ants, the pangolins' main diet, and rehydrate them. Ransford then releases the pangolins back into safer places within the Atawa Forest Reserve in the hope that they will not be recaptured. This is an ongoing battle. Earlier this morning, we found a single pangolin. It was surrounded by the sounds of human whistles and shrieks, engines, cars speeding past, radios blaring, sounds that would have been as unfamiliar to it as the rainforest sounds are to me now. When the sellers saw our car pull over, they rushed to present the bushmeat, ready to barter for a good price, their hands filled with flattened and smoked, rigid and blackened grass cutters. Another seller came up holding a dead and bloodied royal antelope, but Daryl asked whether there were any pangolins. The first man nodded, explained he could not show the pangolin straight away because it was illegal, and went back to his stand, reappearing with one in his hand. Daryl got out of the car. The pangolin, tightly curled up, looked like an inanimate object, something easily dismissed as not being a living creature at all, let alone immeasurably precious, a species that has survived for over 60 million years, now on the brink of extinction. To the seller, it was something that could help fund his own family so he could put food on the table and pay for the education of his children. For the moments where Daryl intervened, diplomatically arguing his cause, stipulating the law, I forgot to breathe. My eyes locked on the ball of scales in the wrong hands. Human hands that have contributed to the pangolin's label of the world's most trafficked animal, the very saddest crown of all. As Daryl explained that he would be confiscating the pangolin, another car pulled up behind us. Inside was a man specifically asking for pangolins, someone who was not asking to save one, but to eat one. I watched the fate of this single pangolin being fought over, its death row trial being conducted on a tarmacked road in the middle of Ghana, as though it represented the fate of its entire species. This time, the good guy won. Daryl got back in the car with the pangolin. We drove down the road and pulled in at a garage, a dirty, noisy concrete place that smelt of petrol, somewhere I would never expect to see a pangolin. Carefully putting the pangolin in a cage, Daryl handed it over to me to release it with the help of Ransford, who would show me a safe spot in the forest. Now, far away from the road, the pangolin is almost safe. Ransford is up ahead of me, disappearing into the green. I follow him, weaving in and out of the trees, climbing over fallen branches and moss-covered rocks. I am slower, careful not to knot the pangolin in the cage. An urgency is mounting inside me, keeping me moving in the sweltering heat, a determined feeling to get the hell away from other people. As the distance lengthens, that feeling founded in anger is changing. Hope is beginning to billow out of me in wisps of tears and smiles, a concoction of emotion that hints at the depth of the plight of the pangolin. I step away from the narrow path, avoiding the golden orb spider and its web that sits like a taut hammock between two trunks. Ransford is waiting for me to give me a nod of approval before walking away. This is the release spot. I lift the pangolin out of its cage, holding it in my hands. Still in a tight ball, it is fluttering slightly, its scales going up and down as it breathes, its tail moving a fraction. For a moment, I look down at the pangolin, a creature of curious beauty that represents both the wonder of the natural world and the struggle it faces as the wild inadvertently butts heads with humanity. I put the pangolin on the ground in amongst a carpet of dry leaves, not far from a small stream. Giving it one last look, a round burnt caramel stone on a bed of leaves, I turn, leaving it alone. Here, it will eventually uncoil, its life unravelling back into the forest where it belongs.